all the things that you'd think that film students would be interested in, like camera moves and lighting and, all the geeky stuff. And then somebody says, yeah, but what do you do when the actor doesn't do what you tell him to do? and suddenly everybody sits up straight and they're paying attention because this is what they really wanted to know about.
Yeah.
They understood all about the other stuff, and I realized then that there was, a lot to be said, because there's no director in the world that hasn't had horrible troubles with actors, and any director who says he's never has is lying.
Yeah.
And because, actors are your creative partners, and they come in there and they've got creative ideas and they want to contribute, and there's no way you're going to shut them up. And if you do try to, you're kind of a fool. So, because you're depriving yourself of the good ideas they have.
Yeah.
So, so when John Travolta turns around to me and just says, "I'm not doing that," and what do? He walks off the set, which he did in Saturday Night Fever a couple of times.
Yeah. Hence the title of your book. I'll be in my trailer.
I'll be in my trailer, and you're there, and you're just stuck. Well, how do you deal with this? And how do I deal when I got a whole crew standing there looking at me, as Laurence Olivier says to me in Dracula, which is one of the great Halloween films, by the way.
Oh yeah, yes, sir.
And he says, "Dear boy, I'm not saying that line." And you go, "Oh, geez, Christ! I got Laurence Olivier, the icon of the English theater, telling me he's not doing this line, and the whole crew's standing there watching." How do you deal with this? It's something that I think, unfortunately, you have to learn over time. It doesn't come easily. It takes every bit of street smarts and experience and living to kind of get through the scariness of dealing with the actors.
Absolutely, and it's always been a challenge. I mean, ever since films came to be, I'm sure. But do you find that it's a lot more prevalent today amongst the young filmmakers, when there's so much focus on just the technical flash of it all, and not as much in characterization or films with a heartbeat?
Well, probably a lot of early film directors came out of theater and were used to working with actors. And when we have directors like Sidney Lumet or George Roy Hill, who came out of theater, Arthur Hiller, they're all very good. But when you have people that are coming from film schools that didn't, put them in contact with actors, they're like totally frightened by actors. They're intimidated, and they don't know what to do. The camera kind of does what you tell it to do. The lights shine where you ask them to shine, and the actor goes, "To heck with you. I don't like that line. I don't like that idea."
Yeah.
And it drives people crazy.
Yeah.
The director's crazy.
And I was very pleased to see in your book where you cover the importance of directors trying their hand at acting, which is something that you've done several times too. What kind of empathy did you gain for the role of the actor from those experiences, and how did that help shape how you direct actors?
If you get up and you're actually trying to act, even let's say you go to an acting class and you get up, well, you begin to realize this is really hard. This is really hard. It looks so easy. The good actors make it look like they're doing very little at all. And yet, it's really hard to be that relaxed and that comfortable and look like you're not acting, but you're just kind of being the character. So every time I do it, I just did it last week in an episode of Las Vegas. We had an actor not show up on the day. He got really sick, and I said, "Oh, it's just a 2-line part. I'll do it." And I threw on this doctor's coat, and I come, across the room and say the 2 lines I have to say. And oh my God, I don't get nervous doing this stuff, but by the time I finished, I again had reappreciated how bloody hard it is, and it gives you sympathy with the actors who come in who are nervous, who are scared. The regular people on like a TV show like Vegas, they're pretty good. They know what they're doing. But the poor so-and-so who comes in, he's just there today.
Right.
Oh, he's terrified. He's, he can barely say his name.
Right.
And you need to be sympathetic to that. You can't start yelling at these people, because the biggest thing that all the actors I interviewed for this book, they just kept saying time and time again was, I want a director to make me feel comfortable on the set.
Mm-hmm.
I can't act when I've got some dictator there who's yelling and screaming. There's just no way I can be relaxed, and relaxation is the most key thing for actors.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you really spend a lot of time sort of like a doctor when he comes in your hospital room the night before an operation and just kind of holds your hand and says, "It's going to be okay. We're going to fix this appendix."
Absolutely.
And they need that kind of comforting, that you're watching and you're not going to let them sink into looking like they're stupid actors.
And that's something that comes across very clearly in your book, that there's all kinds of different personalities amongst directors and actors, and all kinds of different styles, but the absolute seems to be that you create, just like you said, a safe haven where they can produce their best work.
You tell them, what you say? It's okay to fail.
Uh-huh.
It's okay to screw up.
Right.
It's not okay to come in here and not know your lines. It's not okay to show up late. But it's okay if you make a mistake, while we're doing stuff. It's okay if you forget a line. Don't worry about it. We'll fix it, even though you as the director are terrified that it won't make your schedule right, and that this is going to cause you problems. To tell them that is just, asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Because it'll make somebody freeze up even more. So you're just, I'm dying on a show last year with a guy who couldn't remember his name. We wrote it literally on a board and held it up in front of him, his character name, and he couldn't even read it. and Don Johnson and I are sitting there. Don is in the show, and he and I are sitting trying to nurse this poor guy through this part. And that's all we could do was, keep him comfortable. If I started yelling at him, I'd probably still be shooting it today.
Yeah, that's true. Upon reading your book, I thought it was fantastic for directors and actors, whether it be stage or screen, whatever medium they're working in. But also a good chunk of it, I found, applies to any relationship. I mean, I don't want to make your book sound like a Dr. Phil self-help, but do you find a lot of similarities in your own personal relationships to the ones you form between director and actor?
I think I learned a lot about how to deal with actors when my daughter was growing up, and I'm reading books on, how to deal with your children.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that actors are children, because they're not, but, people are people, whether they're little or tall, and a lot of the psychology is the same.
Right.
And, learning how to listen to people who have problems rather than saying, all right, like when your kid falls down and scrapes his knee, you go, that doesn't hurt, it's just a little scrape. And to the kid, he's going, ow, it does hurt.
Yeah.
And you have to listen to him and be able to say, yeah, I bet that really does hurt. And it sounds easy, but it takes a little training. And, the actor the same way. Oh, I'm really scared about this. You can't go and say, oh, don't worry, it'll be easy. You go, yeah, I bet you're kind of concerned about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Acknowledge their concern and use an empathetic approach.
And I tell you, it just helps settle them down. They just need to get it out.
Yeah.
And know that somebody's listening to them.
Now, you've worked with some of the great actors, and I want to go through some of the do's and don'ts that you've outlined in your book, just a couple of them here. For instance, I thought this was very valuable, that when directing an actor, don't attempt to intellectualize the scenes and try your best to use action verbs. Could you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, a lot of times writers will put in a script, he says angrily or guiltily, or they'll give you some kind of adjective, and you say, no. What is our character trying to do here? What are you trying to do? Well, I'm trying to get this girl to go out with me for coffee. Okay. talk her into going out with you for coffee. That's what you're trying to do. And, we're not talking about philosophy of the whole Western world here. We're just a guy trying to talk a girl into going out for coffee.
Yeah.
And this is the hardest thing to teach young directors, and to say, don't give me intellectual English 101 about the whole meaning of the Brothers Karamazov. Just tell me what,
right.
Ivan Karamazov is trying to do to his dad in this scene, or do for his dad. And it's as simple as that. And if you can just make yourself focus on what are you trying to do, then the actor has a goal.
Right.
You're trying to leave this apartment. You want to get away from this person. That's your goal. And you have these lines, these dialogue lines that'll tell you, help you along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But this is by knowing this is going to help you how to say those lines.
Yeah, and it puts it in a context of something that an actor can actually play. You can't play a concept, or No.
But,
yeah.
No, you can only, every time we do something. I mean, you and I are talking right now, and I have the goal of trying to explain a somewhat obscure idea to you, and I'm trying to make it clear. So that's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And you are trying to, get good information for me and make your show as interesting as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So those are our, we have a goal like that no matter what we're doing.
Yeah.
Lying in bed, trying to go to sleep. That's our goal, trying to go to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I found interesting was put your directions in the form of questions, and any opportunity you can, make the talent answer their own questions.
Sure, because you've been on the script. You, the director, have probably been reading it for weeks, if not months,
mm-hmm.
and you know every answer. But the actor shows up, and he probably has not thought it through like you have, and you don't want to just give them the answer. You want to make them figure it out for themselves, because when they do, they own the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And they it's theirs. If you just tell it to them, it's very easy and quick. But at the same time, it's just something somebody told you. But if you sit there and make them figure it out, they're right with you.
It empowers them. Yeah.
Yes, it empowers them. It makes them. You do the same with the staging too. Make them figure out the staging.
Yeah. Well, I looked through some of your actors that you've worked with in the past, Travolta and Rod Steiger and Richard Dreyfuss. They're so unique and all so talented, but what traits do they all seem to share, all great actors?
They're probably very relaxed. They're able to come to you, not in a state of terror, but they also have, and this is critical, their emotions are very close to the surface. And that's what you want. You want an actor whose emotions are accessible to him. Mm-hmm. If somebody is all repressed and sitting on their emotions, well, imagine what kind of performance you're going to get. Mm. But somebody like Rod Steiger, I mean, if you asked him about his child, he had a 5-year-old child when I worked with him, he virtually would start crying right in front of you because he's so full of emotion. Dreyfuss the same way. All good actors. It's right there. It's available, and that's what we're doing as directors. We're telling stories about people's emotions, and we're not looking for crybabies. But we certainly don't want people who are so repressed that it's like, automatons or Dr. Spock, God forbid, on Star Trek.
And they tend to be very close to the child sense inside of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because the actors we call them players. Yeah. And what we're doing is we're doing plays, and we're playing like children. We want to find the child inside the adult body. Mm-hmm. And as we grow up, what we try to do? We try to hide that child. we try to appear like adults. We don't want to be babyish.
Right.
And so it's really kind of tough for us to get back to that playful sandbox mentality where kind of anything goes.
Yeah, and those are extremely talented, generous actors that we've been talking about. But what about the flip side? The Hard Way is one of my favorite movies that you've done. It's one of my favorite movies, period. But
oh, thank you.
That's a comedic depiction of a very kind of pompous, bratty type of actor. But how do you handle someone like that on a real set?
You mean who's being pompous and bratty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a real pain in the butt, and it's kind of at the, where the rubber meets the road in terms of this book, because what do you do? And I've just been on a show where we've had one of those actors, and trying to get their trust is difficult because they've been dealing with all kinds of directors. Every week on a show, there's a new director coming in. So here I'm coming in, and the show has had 4 years of difficulty with this, one particular actor. And they're not about to change. So I've got to kind of start from the ground up and build a little bit of trust. And I went over to them in the first few days of shooting and needed a reaction. The actor was in a card game and found out they'd been screwed in some deal, that they were bluffed out of something, and they need a reaction. Well, in the first take, that the actor did nothing. Just kind of looked like nothing had happened. So I go over and I started to say, I wonder if we can we get a little bit bigger reaction? And the actor looked at me, and before I'd said a word, and said, "I'm not doing it bigger." And I then realized, because then the actor said it, all the directors are after me to be bigger, and I'm not doing it. And I just quickly thought, oh, geez, what am I going to do? And I said, well, all I want you to do is be looking down at your cards, and when you overhear this thing, just look up sharply, and look at the person who was saying that. And the actor said, oh, okay, I can do that. And I think they were afraid of mugging or being overly melodramatic, and just that look up, fine, that's all I wanted, because you don't have to do much on film, to get a good reaction. And the actor was afraid of mugging, and since then, as that actor and I have worked on more scenes, they're more trusting and will listen when I come up and talk, because we've built a little bit of a trust relationship, and they know that I'm looking out for them, not trying to make them look foolish.
Yeah, no. You've also directed. I have to ask you about this gentleman, because he's just a legend. Talk about a legendary talent. You've directed John Cassavetes in Whose Life Is It Anyway? What was that dynamic like when you are directing someone who himself is such a renowned directing talent?
This is a case of every actor, you want to try and know as much as you can about them beforehand, and so you have a guy like this coming in who is highly improvisational, and you want to give him as much room as you can, not box him in. So I'm trying to give Cassavetes a lot of room, and at the same time not mess up what we need to do for the film. What was funny was the first day he's got to pick up the telephone in a scene and say, prepare 10 milligrams of Valium to give to Mr. Harrison. And he said, why do I have to say this line, 10 milligrams of Valium? It just sounds so formal. And why don't I say, let's just give this asshole a shot? And I said, well, John, you can say that, and it's okay, we'll say it. But you know what? Doctors have to be very precise.
Yeah.
They have to give a very careful order So your character would be very precise about what he says, not just leave it to the nurse to do something, and that would just be part of your nature to be very specific and not leave it to chance. And he looked at me and he said, "Kid, I'm doing things for you I wouldn't do for myself." So I don't know. I mean, we got along fine, and he was terrific. Even though he had his kind of grouchy moments, and it was thrilling to be able to work with somebody like that.
Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit about the television that you're directing. You've made mention of it before here. You're directing quite a bit of television shows like Heroes and Las Vegas, as you mentioned. But you write in your book that in a television series, the regular actors know their characters inside and out. They rule the roost, and the director is just another John. But what's that like to enter an environment where it's already kind of a family that's been assembled there? They're very comfortable with one another, and you're the outsider having to call the shots.
It's very nervous-making, and when I can, what I try to do is I did an episode of a show called Psych up in Vancouver a couple of months ago, and I asked the producers, can I come 2 days early, because I just want to hang out on the set a little bit, just so they can start to get used to me, and see me as not this guy who's screeching up in a car at the last minute and hopping in and hollering, starting to holler orders to people, and I did the same on Las Vegas, so that they're used to seeing me, and then I'm on my best behavior, of course, the first few days.
Right.
So they see that this is not somebody who's coming in trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
But have a fun atmosphere and a playful atmosphere and joke around and make things light and fun. Because you're right, it's spooky to walk in. You're walking into a family and saying, no, let's move the fireplace from over there to this over here, and you sleep in this bedroom, not that bedroom.
Yeah, and I would think that you really that time that you spend before shooting is valuable too, because and to study the show as well, because each of these shows, I'm thinking about Las Vegas too. Las Vegas definitely has its own particular style, both in its tone and the look of it. So you really have to do your homework and not, like you said, reinvent the wheel when it comes to something like that.
Oh yeah, they have a certain look that they want. Any show does, and you study it and you say, okay, what is it they're doing? And now what can I bring to the party? And what can I do to do this, maybe even better than they do it? Mm-hmm. But don't go in and ignore the good things that they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I can fit in, and maybe I can invent some new things, invent some new trick shots on Heroes, for example. New ways for people to transform from one kind of creature into another, and how can I do this in a fun way?
Yeah. Oh, what a fun show that is. Before you go, we're running out of time, but I have to ask you about two films, one of which just came out in the 30th anniversary DVD, and another that's probably coming out, I think, early next year in a 25th year anniversary DVD, and that's Saturday Night Fever and WarGames. Mm-hmm. When you look back at these films so many years later, is it kind of strange to look back on these projects, or are you able to step back and be objective about the filmmaking experience, or what is that like?
It is odd. I mean, they've become removed from you, and you're looking at something that happened in another lifetime. Mm-hmm. And you also see the mistakes that you made that you thought you covered up, that you didn't really cover up. They're still staring at you like sore thumbs 25 years later, and you're going, why did I do that? Oh, my gosh, I thought we covered it up, but it's still, there, and I feel guilty. Or even worse, where you sometimes in the middle of the night, wake up and go, oh, I know how to do that. Only it's like too late. Too late.
But Saturday Night Fever, talk about a movie that has survived and thrived over the years. What do you attribute to that film's ongoing legacy in its survival?
It's really, really simple. It's just a brilliant script. Norman Wexler, it's all the characters and the that live so vibrantly that come alive on the page, and then you surround them with this great music and fun dancing, fabulous dancing, and the whole story comes together as the sum of all of these wonderful things. But without those characters, without that fabulous foundation underneath, it would be a much more empty experience. And you can look at other movies that were made after Saturday Night Fever that tried to do the same thing. Said, "Oh, we'll just get some great songs and some great dancing, and it'll be wonderful." And yet, they were flat and unsatisfying.
Mm-hmm. There's a real humanity in the film that I think people are responding to even today.
Right. Yeah. You recognize yourself. I was never in Brooklyn until 3 weeks before I started shooting this picture, and yet coming out of Alabama and England, which is my weird heritage, I completely related to these guys.
Yeah.
I understood them, people did. Everybody got these characters.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's ahead for you on the feature film front? I've read two possibilities recently. One being a project dealing with Iran-Contra, and the other focusing on Princess Diana. Are those rumors, or is that true?
Well, those are very, very true. True projects, and we're working really hard on the Princess Diana. It's not that the film is so much about her as it's about all the people that we're trying to do her in.
Mm. Oh wow!
And it's kind of scary when you start totting up all of these different groups of people who were, out to get her for one reason or another, because she was a threat to not just the British throne, but Hamas and Mossad and the Rising Sun, which is the Russian mafia, and even the CIA. And you go, oh my God, who is it that's responsible for what happened in that tunnel on that night?
Right.
Man, that's a fantastic project.
Yeah, I mean that's wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's kind of scary to see, and the film doesn't have any answers, but it lets you really see everything, because nobody really knows the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But we sure know all the people that were involved up to that point, and it could have been any one of these several groups.